The US version of Top Gun was one of the most successful NES games. I still see shelves full of Top Gun carts when I go into some retro gaming stores. I remember at the time, I did not like Top Gun very much. By the point that I saw it, I was already playing flight simulators on my computer, and the shooting gallery nature of Top Gun just didn't really impress me. Over 30 years later, and I'm a bit more charitable to that kind of shooting gallery, and I'd go so far as to say that the Famicom version of Top Gun is a better Afterburner game than the Famicom version of Afterburner. But I still find it to be deeply flawed. Simultaneously too simple in the action, too difficult, and needlessly complicated for certain segments. It's a weird mix for a game. Top Gun is loosely based on the 1986 Tom Cruise film, which was about the raw homoeroticism inherent in the Navy. The game has you take the role of any Navy pilot, not necessarily any of the characters from the film, and you fly a series of 4 missions with your F-14 Tomcat. There's a few odd things here before we get into the actual gameplay. This is the first cartridge from Konami that wasn't manufactured by Konami. It's in a standard Nintendo cart, has the Nintendo cart manufacturing code on it, so it seems like there was enough demand for Top Gun that Konami would have to hand off manufacturing to Nintendo for it, while their smaller production line handled the game that they would release a few days later. It's kind of rare, but Konami will do this a few times through the Famicom's lifespan. Second, Top Gun was released almost simultaneously in Japan and the US. Somehow, though, there are considerable differences between the two versions. The US version of Top Gun makes it clear that you're attacking some Middle Eastern country, while the Japanese map doesn't really correspond to any place on Earth, though if you squint just right, maybe you're attacking China? There's music that plays during the action in the Japanese version, and after the missions, your plane gets a kill tally. There's only 4 missions in Top Gun, but you only have 3 lives, and there are no continues. As you're flying along, you can take multiple hits from bullets, but 1 missile will take you out, plus you could crash from running out of fuel, or failing to land properly. If you're trying to take out the targets, you're going to have a hard time surviving all the way to Mission 4. Every stage is basically on a rail. You take off in a cutscene you have no control over, and then planes come at you in waves of 3, or you might see some surface targets that you have to attack. The A button fires guns, while the B button initiates a missile lock-on. Pressing B again fires a missile. You're given your choice of 3 different missile types when you start a mission. You can carry more of the weaker ones, and the only things that they really matter for are the surface targets. Planes will be taken out by 1 bullet or 1 missile, while surface targets might require multiple hits unless you use a stronger missile. In the first stage, the only targets are planes, so take the weaker missiles there. On the second stage, you'll be taking out some ships, so I'd recommend the medium option for that one. It helps that you're refueled and rearmed in the middle of the second stage, too. If a missile's fired at you, you can shoot it down with your gun, or you can try to dodge, and dodging missiles is a little bit tricky. It has to be just outside of your HUD when it passes you. And missiles have a pretty strong tendency to pull right to the middle faster than you can react. Sometimes a plane will approach you from behind and get a missile lock on you. The way out of that is to push left, and then push right. Flying in Top Gun does not resemble actual flying. Although it shows an altitude and airspeed meter, those have no practical effect on flying. You're not allowed to go below a certain altitude, so you can never crash into the ground. And you can't adjust your speed in combat. You also can't circle around to get things that you miss. You are strictly on a rail in Top Gun. Oddly enough, this changes when it becomes time to land. Then you have to line yourself up with the aircraft carrier, keep your nose in the correct position, and maintain speed at the correct velocity. Failing to do so will mean you crash. The A and B buttons adjust the speed for this, and you need to be going about 300 miles per hour when you land. I'd recommend adjusting yourself down to about there and maintaining that as you work on the position. Once you know how it's done, there's no challenge to that segment, but it can be very confusing if you're just following the on-screen prompts. If you crash in the process of doing this, you lose a life, but at least you complete the mission. Refueling works in a similar way, but there you have to accelerate the plane up to 1500 miles per hour, then move the nozzle into position in order to refuel. That's right, they're doing the refueling at Mach 2. The fuel gauge is basically a timer, and since the stage is on rails, refueling is something that you'll be required to do on some stages. So reevaluating after all these years, would I play Top Gun again? No, I don't think so. There's just not enough going on with the action, and the attacks are random enough that it feels unfairly hard. Top Gun basically falls just below my threshold of games that I would put up with. I could put it in and play, but I'd always be thinking, shouldn't I play something else?